Alright guys, Tactical here again today, and I wanted to talk about some Rostermania rumours to start with, but not too much has happened over the last day or so. Then I wanted to get into the main topic, which is the Black Ops 4 Dream Team. I had this recommended to me by a subscriber to do this topic. I did talk about it a bit in my 10k Q&A, but I thought it'd be an interesting video to discuss, and also maybe it could even be done in a few months' time when maybe the best players in the game have changed. Effectively, the game here that we are playing is that, well, if we're an organisation owner, we get to pick and choose players, and maybe even a coach, we'll throw that in there as well, from any team in the CWL, and we can make our absolute dream squad that's going to win every event. Then who do we pick up, effectively, is this game we're playing here? So it's an interesting question. I'm sure there's a couple of picks which will be, you know, similar for pretty much everyone, but I'm sure as it gets towards the 4th and 5th player, people differ on who they think the very best possible team in the game could be, because of course you've got aspects of pacing to consider, you've got chemistry, which is a difficult thing to contrive and difficult thing to ensure that you're going to get. Of course, you've got gun skill, which is the main thing I think a lot of people will be focusing on, because once you've got the gun skill there, then the other things can, you know, attempt to follow, at least at the very best. At least gun skill is something you can actually kind of objectively measure when you're creating a team like this. So there's a lot of things to consider, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Before we do get into it, I believe Rattle pointed out to me, Rattlesnake this is, absolute legend in my Discord, and also he's in the comments a fair bit as well, that, well, 10,600 subscribers was a goal I had a while ago, because it was about the subscriber count that Fox had, and I was thinking that, you know, at some point maybe I'll be the largest, in terms of subscriber count, Call of Duty content creator that does this type of content. So if you exclude Lando's UMG events channel, which is, there's other things going on there apart from just Call of Duty content, and I guess at the current time we are now the largest channel that does this type of video. So of course Fox, without him, I probably wouldn't be making these type of videos. He did a fantastic job for a couple of years, has moved away from Call of Duty a little bit now. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that name. But yeah, hopefully he comes back at some point. But I think at the current time we are in the pole position, so thanks a lot for that as always. If you're not yet joined the subscribers, the excellent subscribers down in the comment section below, then feel free to do so. So first of all, let's go through a couple of Rostermania rumours. This Codburner says this yesterday. I heard EG is getting Asim and Phantoms on loan. They're still after Brack but are offering less than Denial. EXG adding Nolson, which is very exciting when Brack leaves, especially if you know, anyone knows that name. Fantastic player in the European scene, of course, on Team Swing at the start of the year. Then we have this stuff. Phase announcement was supposed to be yesterday on Friday, but Codburner says there's still paperwork to finish off. Seems pretty obvious it's going to happen though. Attach, I think he did a really cool gesture, giving someone some like train tickets and the like to get to CWL London, and he said like, yeah, wear a FaZe jersey to turn up or something like that. So that seems pretty obvious. We also have this from Denial, Year of the Wolf. Now, this is interesting, whether this is a confirmation of some sort of, well, it seems like it's a likely confirmation of some sort of change on Denial. It's a bit of a weird logo. It looks like they've made some sort of PS2 game or something. But yeah, whether this means they're going to announce a change soon, potentially likely. It seems behind the scenes that, yeah, a lot of those French guys have been off the squad and the old Red Reserve team are going to be on it, but we'll have to see how it all turns out. And also we have this from Apathy, Call of Duty Player 4, question mark. So definitely seems like he's off Envy at the current time. There was a clip from Fero's stream where Aches said that he used his Twitch Prime sub on Apathy, and then someone said like, oh, you dropped him though or something. And yeah, it does seem like Apathy is no longer on this team, likely to Evil Geniuses is my guess. So these are some beautiful color coordinated stats courtesy of EasyMac. This is the stuff from the Pro League. Now I thought I'd just bring this up. Of course, stats isn't everything, but if you're trying to create a super team, stats is definitely a relatively big thing to consider. Now, obviously, this doesn't include exactly matches played, for example. So Dashy and Simp, they only played the last couple of weeks of the Pro League because, well, they only played 1 week of games effectively in the Pro League. So, you know, those stats are not necessarily artificially inflated, but just on the smaller sample size. Players that have played every single week of the Pro League and also have still high stats, then, you know, those are guys to really look at here. And of course, Dashy and Simp are definitely excellent players in their own right. So we have Hardpoint KDs, S&D KDs. This is courtesy of EasyMac. May have already said that, but superb stuff. Leave his links down in the description box below as always if you want to check him out on Twitter and find all of this goodness. So to start building our super team, we've got to keep pacing into account, because with that World War II roster for Optic Gaming in the Stage 2 in the second half of the season, I'm sure a lot of you guys won't want to remember it, but that was this team of Scumpy, Crimsix, Octane and Methods, obviously, right? And that team was actually incredibly good at hardpoint. They I think a lot of people forget this fact, that they were almost undefeated in hardpoint. They would never get outslayed at all, which is definitely what you'd expect. But of course, the pacing just wasn't there in the search and destroys and the CTFs. It was always Scump like overextending heavily because his team weren't really coming with him. Crimsix was not a good second sub in that role, I think. And on the PPSH in that particular game, he couldn't really have the same pacing to support Scump. So you really want to get the pacing right when you create a team like this. So let's start from our SMG line. I think the obvious first pick has got to be Huke, because this guy has been spectacular throughout this season. Of course, historically, he's been superb in Advanced Warfare as well. Was pretty good last season when you consider it, even though he had a pretty tough roster. But he's sitting at a 1.22 KD here with an SMG in hand. The only player that eclipses that is Simp, but you can't say too much about that. He's only played 1 week of the Pro League, but definitely has the potential to be a Huke-like talent when we see him in action for a bit longer. Coming up, of course, to the event at CWL London at the start of May. So Huke has to be my number one pick. Of course, we've got to pair him with someone in the SMG line. And, well, I think this is maybe the most contentious pick here, because the Maddox players, which we'll look at in a second, should be relatively obvious. This second SMG, I think, is not guaranteed. I think Temp has got to have a big shout for him right now. I would probably put Temp in the team, considering Huke and Temp have some prior history back in Advanced Warfare, I think, and also on that, well, disappointing Envy team at the start of the halfway through the start of the World War II season. So, yeah, Huke and Temp is probably going to be my SMG line. I think that's absolutely filthy. And, well, moving on from there, we have the Maddox players. So we're going to leave the AR for last. I think that Rated made an interesting comment on Reddit, which we'll have a look at in a second here. So he said the following: Janabi posted a thread on Reddit, why do players not form a GoDSquad? And this was Rated's reply: any ICR player, Gunless, Dashy, Huke, Temp, not losing a series on Black Ops 4. And yeah, so any ICR player, we'll have to decide in a second who our ICR player should be. So, our Maddox line should be relatively comfortable here. We can have 2 SMGs in Temp and Huke. Maybe Temp can pull out a Maddox on some maps if it's required. And then our players really have to be Gunless and Dashy. I don't think this will be particularly contentious here. Dashy, of course, in terms of pure statistical firepower, he reminds me a lot of, I don't know if you guys keep up with CSGO too much, but there's always this paradigm between like Simple and the Nikos of the world. And Simple, when you watch him play, you think like, there's no way I could do that. Like, the kind of shots he's hitting is just ridiculous. When you watch Nico play, he makes the game just look incredibly easy. And his movement is perfect. He's just popping crisp headshots left, right, and center. This kind of reminds me, like, between Huke and Dashy and, like, Gunless as players. Like, Huke and Dashy, you watch them, you're like, oh my god, like, this guy's just cracked out of his mind. Like, how does he hit these shots he's hitting? And also has very nice movement as well, of course. But Gunless is just like, he's just an absolute machine. And I think I'd relate him to Nico more in this aspect. How when you watch Gunless play, the game just comes so easily to him. He looks like he's waltzing around the map, just like moving left and right. Like he's snapping on targets, but it seems just way too easy for him. And he always seems to make the correct play. I think that Gunless is an incredibly smart player. And yeah, even though he might not have the raw gun skill of Dashy and Huke, I think as Aches put it in the Eavesdrop podcast, he said that like, well, everyone shoots straight at this level, but Dashy and Huke, they shoot a bit more straight. And yeah, Gunless doesn't necessarily shoot straight, but okay, he shoots very, very straight indeed, but he doesn't necessarily shoot quite as well as a guy like Dashy or Huke, but I'd still consider him arguably the best player in the game on account of, how good he is as it seems like as a teammate, how good he is in the clutch, how intelligent he is as a player, also his incredible gun skill, always seems to be in the right place at the right time. So I think Gunless is just arguably the perfect player at the current time in this current state. So, and he's been the best player in the game at some point at least, or at least arguably, for the last 3 titles. So I think you have to put Gunless in there. I think you probably have to put Dashy in there just off pure ability. Like, the stuff he was doing at Vegas was absolutely ungodly. Let's go through some of the stats then for the last 3 events. This is Dashy at Vegas, the 1.56 AKD, 1.44 KD overall, 2.2 in Search and Destroy. Gunless, of course, was right up here, so was Temp. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we redo this video in a few months' time. Will a guy like Decimate, how now potentially getting this opportunity on this Envy roster, live up to the billing that we've seen from him earlier on in the title? And maybe he's even a name we could consider here. Also, Arcetes as well. He had a 1.4 at Vegas. Haven't seen that kind of ability, a kind of level from him from a while. Maybe he can get back to that point. Maybe a new guy like Simp can come up and maybe join into our top 5. We'll have to see. This is from the Pro League, so Mork's actually leads the standings in the Pro League, along here with Slasher and Octane. So some assault rifles really mixing it up. These are guys, of course, we can consider for our ICR in just a second here. Slasher could definitely be a heavy consideration for a Maddox, but I don't really know who you put Slasher in place of. Do you put him in place of Gunless or Dashy? I think it's difficult to do. Of course, he does have some experience with Huke and Temp, but their experience on that Envy roster at the start of World War II wasn't great, so maybe I'm not rushing to put those guys back together. Of course, it really is nice to have people on this team that really know how to win, because Huke and Temp, like, they haven't won an event in Call of Duty. Dashy, Dashy has, and Gunless certainly has as well, but it really would be nice as like a fifth to have a guy that has a lot of experience winning events and can maybe mesh them together and, well, get them to a point where they really know how to win, because if the gun skill's there, but the kind of clutch factor, and if they don't perform when the pressure's really on, and, you know, there's potential things like that can happen with a team that isn't so experienced in winning championships. It's unlikely with the kind of talents on this team, but definitely possible. It would be nice to have a fifth player that really has experience in this regard. Slasher would be a good one, but we'll talk about, well, what my pick might be in just a second. So this is from the Pro League. Of course, Dashy's up here, Huke's up here as well, Journey and Risk deserve honourable mentions, and this is from CWL Fort Worth, where Octane absolutely crushed it, Dashy as well, but Optic didn't have the best placing, of course. Attach was very good, Gunless, of course, he's always going to be in and around. Scraps is definitely a player that we could consider as well. As the Maddox, he has been fantastic as of late. Of course, him and Gunless, that duo at the Toronto event was very strong indeed. But, you know, if we want to make sure the pacing is correct and we want to have two SMGs that have some experience together and who can temp, then I've got to choose between Scraps and Dashy, and it's a bit difficult. If there were 6 players on the roster, Scraps may well be one to heavily be considered. But right now, I think Dashy's probably got to have the benefit of the doubt, especially his performance so far this season. So as a 5th player, we need an ICR to join alongside Huke, Temp, Dashy and Gunless. And, well, it's interesting because there's a lot of potential players we can have here. Morks may be considered one of the best right now in the entire game. You could also definitely consider Octane as well. I think Octane may be a very, very strong pick indeed. I also thought when I said this in the Q&A, I might have considered maybe Octane and Priester. So having Priester instead of Temp, because he was very, very good at the time I was recording that video. Priester maybe dropped off a little bit so far, but he's still sitting here at a very solid 1.14 given that SMG role. And then I was thinking maybe I even got Crowder in as coach, have experience with Octane and Priester on that 100 Thieves lineup, and then you could kind of create like a super team within a super team kind of thing. Maybe Octane isn't necessarily the best pick, even though right now him and Morks are probably the best ICRs in the game. I'm very tempted to put a guy like Crimsix in there, because Crim, of course, he's won, 33 championships, something like that at the current time. He has an incredible amount of experience winning. Of course, he's got experience with Dashy, and I'm sure he could be the type of player to get the best out of guys like Huke and Temp. Of course, you know, playing with Temp would be interesting for Crimsix for sure. So I'm not sure if I was really thinking about chemistry that Crimsix would be the best pick. But in terms of, you know, winning ability, someone who knows how to win, someone who can get winning genes out of other people, Crimsix has got to be up there. So maybe that would be my super team. It's difficult for me to choose, I think, between Octane and Crimsix, because, yeah, Octane's a fantastic player, but I think on that team we would need like a coach that could really control things, because unless Gunless is going to be the big man who steps up to the plate and really controls the team, it would be nice to have a player that has more experience in that leadership kind of role, which is kind of why I'm leaning in Crimsix's favour here. So I think that's going to be my God squad of Crimsix, Huke, Temp, Dashy and Gunless. And who would I put as a coach on that team? I don't know, it's difficult to say. Maybe a guy like Crowder or Bevels or something like that seems to have done a great job in their teams, but it's obviously very difficult to say because we're mix and matching players from, well, basically every single roster you can possibly assemble right here. So yeah, leave all your thoughts in the comment section below this one. I'd be interested to hear what you think. Like if you enjoy, subscribe. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. As always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and I will see you next time.